Boys, this gang known as the New York Boys, and Darrell Whiting, their leader, as the principal cocaine trafficker in the city.
In less than 3 years, Whiting had built his gang from a handful of members into a cocaine empire, complete with lieutenants, couriers, and security forces. At any given time, there were as many as 100 people on the payroll. The Orchard Park housing project made an ideal base for his drug operation.
It provided enough space where he could sell drugs out of one building, store drugs in another building, but enough of an area where he could have a security force that could watch the grounds for law enforcement or watch the grounds for rival gangs and successfully ply his trade and sell his drugs.
So powerful was the gang that Whiting actually controlled the housing project. He had his own security patrols around the clock.
There was a 10 o'clock p.m. to a 10 o'clock a.m. shift and then another 12-hour shift during the daylight into the evening hours. They would literally patrol rooftops, carry walkie-talkies, leave firearms under the wheel wells of cars that they could use quickly to ward off rival gangs.
The gang leader sold his drugs from apartments in the project, which he took over, mostly from single welfare mothers.
Mr. Whiting could very easily step in there, offer them effectively a free supply, a steady supply of cocaine. If he would permit, they would permit him to use those apartments to sell out of, to store guns, to store money, to store drugs, to allow workers to sleep and live at.
Whiting was selling 3 to 5 kilos of cocaine a week for about $35,000. Like Al Capone 60 years earlier, Whiting ruled through intimidation and brutality.
He would beat up people, for example, for insulting his girlfriend, for not paying proper respect to him, for trying to move into his territory. And the punishment would either be a warning, a severe beating, or in some cases murder.
Gangbuster and federal drug agent George Festa headed a task force that worked with Boston police and the ATF to target the Whiting gang.
In his particular area, he was the law. He was, in his own words, God.
Also like Capone, whose soup kitchens made him a popular figure during the Depression, Whiting was a master at appearing to be a genuine community leader. He operated a social club where neighborhood kids gathered to play ping pong, shoot pool, take karate lessons, and listen to music.
My whole intention was to try to serve as a role model, right, for people who had, say, skills, intelligence, finances, and resources to, provide opportunity and programs for the community, right, to help relieve some of the violence and crime in the community.
What he was really doing was two things. One, bringing in new customers for his drug business, and two, bringing in people who would eventually become new members of his gang.
Whiting owned 3 other properties: a video rental store, an athletic shoe store, and a barber shop. The gangbusters would eventually gather evidence that Whiting distributed drugs from all these locations. But the social club was his headquarters, and Whiting cleverly protected it from surveillance.
This particular gang used a number of kind of counter-surveillance and counter-law enforcement measures, including not only warning systems, electronic warning systems in some of the locations that they inhabited, but they also used pit bulls, which actually roamed the areas in certain buildings that they occupied.
So the gangbusters decided that an undercover operation was the best way to uproot Whiting and the New York Boys. Posing as small-time cocaine dealers, agents made several drug buys from gang members. In this surveillance photo, the agent in the white hat is making a purchase as Whiting looks on. The gangbusters also gathered evidence through recording phone calls. In this call, music is blaring in the background as the agent haggles with a gang member about how many grams of cocaine he is purchasing.
Make sure I get 20. I don't care, as long as I get 20.
I don't know how much the weight is, man. We can't guarantee you the weight. But we bag up the stuff down here by spoons. You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you gonna lose money like that.
Nah, that's how we know our systems, man. You know what I'm saying? If our system didn't work, we wouldn't be here 5 years successful. We would have 12s and 80s and all that.
I consider myself a person who is determined to get the gangs off the street.
This undercover agent, whose identity cannot be disclosed, had the job of trying to purchase drugs directly from Darrell Whiting. But he had to negotiate with Whiting's second-in-command, David Waite, known on the street as Divine. In this phone call, the agent refers to a key, a street term for a kilo of cocaine.
Okay, listen up. Listen me carefully, man. Wednesday. Can you give me the offer key Wednesday?
Good.
How much you going to charge for the offer key Wednesday?
I don't like talking to on the phone, but
3,500?
15,000. 15,000.
5?
Yeah.
So what time Wednesday can I get it? Where?
I'm gonna let you meet by the house.
In this surveillance photo, the agent is buying drugs from one of Whiting's boys, while another 14-year-old gang member named Glacy acts as a lookout.
Hey, I'm my bodyguard. You're my bodyguard. That's good, man. The kid was a mastermind of surveillance. He was surveilling the police every turn they make. He was noticing every cars. He was ready to fight anytime. He was ready to run around the corner and whistle and inform them that the cops are around. He was ready to commit a crime if he has to.
The gangbusters say Whiting paid Glacy and other kids as young as 11 years old $500 a week to alert gang members to the presence of police.
There was enough to make it very attractive to these young kids who otherwise, number one, couldn't find a job, or if they could, it was for minimum wage, working as a bag boy at a local grocery or something. Nothing compared to the money that they could make in a short period of time working for this fellow.
Finally, the day of reckoning, when the gangbuster came face to face with Whiting.
I remember I introduced myself as Peter. It was funny. He told me, "How are you doing, Peter? You all right?" I said, "No, I'm not all right until I can get some help." I said, "What help?" I said, "I need some drugs because I hate traveling to New York. So I'll take care of you." I said, "Thanks."
This was one of 3 occasions when the agent dealt directly with Whiting, buying a total of $8,000 in cocaine, a vital step in the efforts to bust the gang.
We had him actually in one tape counting $100 bills on a tabletop where you could hear the money hitting the table, as he counted out thousands of dollars for that drug transaction.
During the 18-month investigation of the New York boys, the gangbusters spent nearly $75,000 in undercover drug purchases. After taking over 100 surveillance photos and recording hundreds of hours of conversations, it was time to take down the gang. On December 12, 1990, over 100 Boston Task Force officials raided several locations around the city. They arrested about 20 gang members, many of them right in a housing project.
In some areas, they were actually cheering us when we went in to make the arrest, so it was very heartwarming to see this response from the people.
During the roundup, authorities seized drugs, drug paraphernalia, an arsenal of weapons, including Uzis, tens of thousands of dollars worth of jewelry, 3 safes, and records of Whiting's vast drug empire. A federal grand jury indicted Whiting and 50 of his fellow gang members on a wide range of drug racketeering and weapons charges. At his trial in June 1991, Whiting became his own worst enemy by taking the stand and boxing himself into a corner.
He simply testified and pointed, as I recall, to the defendant, David Waite, who he called Divine. He said, "Oh, he's the one. I saw him. He engaged in that sale. He sold him that cocaine," which, of course, created a huge uproar in the courtroom.
Whiting was found guilty and sentenced to a life term without parole. At the federal prison in Terre Haute, Indiana, Whiting still denies that his gang even existed.
I was no gang leader, and the New York boys was no gang. We were just a group of individuals from New York and Boston, who the people from Boston called the New York boys.
After Whiting's trial, not unexpectedly, about half the remaining defendants pleaded guilty. Those who did not plead guilty were then convicted in a second trial.
I think, looking back, why it was successful is that rather than just pick off 1 or 2 members or isolated drug transactions, we were able to very comprehensively come in and eradicate the entire organization.
When gangs target a community, people want action. But those who dare to speak out against gangs are often silenced with a bullet. Up next, the story of one community's courage to face and ultimately help bust a brutal gang in New York's Chinatown.
A drug dealer with a reputation.
You better pay your bills with Jeff, or he's going to send someone to collect it.
Willing to kill in cold blood.
he became my #1 suspect.
Stopping a brutal killer.
And he was getting stronger and stronger and bolder and bolder.
On the FBI Files, tonight, 9/8 Central, on the new Escape, Slip Away.
Now that I have my new Miracle Ear hearing aids, life is great again.
Susan, have you seen my keys?
I can hear everything.
Hey, Susan.
My grandkids playing,
Susan.
my music. I can hear everything.
Susan, the car keys, where are they? I can't find my car keys.
What's that, honey? I can hear everything I want to hear.
Oh, here they are. When did they put them there?
With over 1,200 locations nationwide, Miracle Ear is the hearing aid brand America trusts. When you visit, you'll meet with a certified hearing care specialist who will take the time to understand exactly what you need. And there's a wide range of state-of-the-art solutions to choose from, so you'll be sure to find the perfect fit. With Miracle Ear, you'll like what you hear. Sound good? Then schedule your free hearing test and video otoscope exam at a location near you. When you call, be sure to ask about the incredible new Genius technology, available exclusively from Miracle Ear. In challenging listening environments, new Genius technology provides you up to 25% better speech recognition than people with normal hearing. Directional focus automatically zooms in on conversations in front of you, eliminating other distracting sounds. Wireless windscreen takes away the wind noise, allowing you to hear other outdoor sounds more clearly. Voice Target 360 targets the people that you want to hear from any direction, automatically, for comfortable conversations in the car, at the theater, at parties, and more. And with Genius Link, you can wirelessly stream phone calls, music, and TV directly to your hearing aid from your smartphone, tablet, or MP3 player. With Miracle Ear, you'll like what you hear. Visit a Miracle Ear location today to start your risk-free trial of the most advanced technology from Miracle Ear. It's genius.
Call 1-800-950-6555 or visit miracleear.com.
You have the right to the internet.
Anytime, anywhere.
With no contracts or commitments. Without paying an arm and a leg.
NetZero believes in mobile internet for everyone. That's why we've made getting mobile access easier and more affordable than ever. Call or go online for a free trial of NetZero mobile internet.
Update your status.
Share photos.
Work during lunch.
NetZero lets you take the internet with you, so there's no need to go searching for a public place to get online.
You have the right to a plan that fits your needs.
NetZero offers a wide range of plans with no contracts, no commitments, and no overage fees, with plans starting at just $9.95 per month. No one else makes getting mobile internet this easy and affordable. NetZero mobile broadband.
Private.
Protected.
Mobile internet access for all. For all.
For all.
Try NetZero mobile broadband free. Call 1-888-775-6004 or go online to netzero.com/TV83.
We now return to gangbusters. One of the most frightening types of gang crime is extortion. Gangs demand that business owners pay them protection money and threaten violence if they refuse. A crime practiced with deadly force by a Vietnamese gang in New York City's Chinatown, known as Born to Kill. In July 1990, nearly 100 people marched through Chinatown, a funeral procession for a slain leader in the Born to Kill gang. The tribute ended at a gravesite in the Rosedale Cemetery in Linden, New Jersey. 3 rival gang members, posing as mourners, pulled guns from behind flower arrangements. They opened fire into the crowd, wounding 5 people. The shooting not only shocked the public, it provoked police to target Born to Kill. The roots of many Asian gangs can be found in the Chinese tradition of the Tong, a benevolent society that helped struggling immigrants find jobs and housing. The Tongs were a powerful force among Chinese immigrants in the 1920s and 30s, but many Tongs became corrupt breeding grounds for gang violence and extortion. These new gangs emerged in the 1970s. With their multiple dialects and unpredictability, they posed a new challenge for gangbusters. One of the most notorious such gang leaders to emerge in the 1980s was a Vietnamese immigrant named David Thai. Thai belonged to the Chinese Flying Dragons. In the 1980s, the gang took to using Vietnamese immigrants to do their dirty work: assault, extortion, murder. The Vietnamese were newcomers with no roots in the community. Ty was one such recruit, and he rose to a position of power in the gang. Ty broke from the Dragons in 1988, taking other Vietnamese recruits with him. They took the name Born to Kill from a slogan in a popular film about U.S. Marines in Vietnam. His followers called David An Hai, or Big Brother. They devoted their lives to the sense of family and belonging they found with him. The gang was feared throughout Chinatown, even among other Asian gangs. Along Canal Street, they exuded anything but family values.
They thrived on the reputation of being wild, like almost cowboys. When they walked down Chinatown, they would walk into a restaurant and eat without paying. They would walk into a store and take whatever article of clothing that they wanted, and no one would say a word to them.
Born to Kill, or BTK as it was also known, flourished by extorting protection money from every Vietnamese business, street vendor, or restaurant inside their Chinatown territory.
They were victims who the gang believed would not call them to justice and not get them in trouble with the police. And to a large extent, that was true. Not many gang members got prosecuted successfully in the early part of this gang's existence.
When the so-called tax money wasn't paid, gang members would steal jewelry, scare customers away, brutalize store owners, even murder. One Chinatown businessman tried to defy Born to Kill. Sen Vin Ta identified for police the gang members who had robbed his jewelry store in January 1991. David Tai ordered one of his lieutenants to get rid of Sen Vin Ta permanently. In the early evening hours of March 10th, Ta was executed inside his store in front of his wife and nephew.
The community recognized that Sen Vin Ta was murdered in retaliation for his cooperating with the police. So, especially after that murder, the gang was really viewed as almost invulnerable.
By now, BTK, with about 100 members, was spreading its influence along the East Coast, from Connecticut to Georgia. Their main activity was robbing Asian jewelry stores. But gangbusters were on their trail. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms was tracking the gang for selling guns to undercover officers in New Jersey. ATF soon joined forces with New York City Police and the U.S. Attorney's Office. The joint task force had gotten underway just prior to Ta's murder. The killing made them all the more determined to uproot Born to Kill.
This gang was getting out of control. It was almost as if they were laying down the gauntlet, Clint Eastwood style, and asking us to make their day for them, and we did.
American justice has created one very effective tool to help bust gangs: federal racketeering laws known as RICO. Under RICO, prosecutors can target an entire gang enterprise, not just individual crimes. That's exactly what gangbusters needed to do in attacking Born to Kill.
The crime here really was more than just simply discrete crimes being committed over a period of time. It was the presence of a criminal gang that terrorized people wherever they went, and most particularly in Chinatown. And it was only through sort of a broad approach of attacking the gang as a whole that we were able to get to a jury the evidence of all this, the gang's criminal activities, and bring the leadership to account.
To bust the gang, prosecutors would first have to prove that Born to Kill existed as a criminal enterprise. That meant linking them to past crimes and documenting their intent to commit more crimes in the future. To do that, authorities needed witnesses, people who would say the gang had extorted them. There was only one problem. The murder of Sen Vin Ta had sent a clear message to anyone thinking of ratting on the gang. And if the police couldn't stop the gang, how would they protect future witnesses and their families?
Without the help of community members, nothing was going to change. The gang was not going to go away without their help. It was their community, and this gang was victimizing it, and we needed their help to do something about it. And the community rallied behind that.
Slowly, quietly, a few members of the Chinatown community did begin finding the courage to approach the task force and identify themselves as victims of the extortion racket. Part of the reason is that gangbusters were able to explain to individual crime victims that they would have plenty of company on the witness stand.
One of the things that we were able to convince many of the witnesses was that the prosecution was not going to rest on any one person's testimony alone. Once they realized that there were going to be dozens of witnesses and hundreds of exhibits, some of the reluctance decreased.
The gangbusters also needed an informant. Their break came when police detectives were able to turn a 19-year-old BTK member who had been arrested on robbery charges. He had a photographic memory and could recall precise details from past crimes. In exchange for leniency, he was put to work.
We then put him back out on the street, closely supervised, living with other gang members, secretly tape recording their conversations, telling law enforcement virtually on a daily basis what the gang was doing, what they were planning to do. And by doing that, we were able to get evidence of crimes on an ongoing basis as they were about to occur, or in some cases as they were occurring.
Saturday was a big day for extortions, and matter of fact, during our investigation, we actually followed several of the gang members as they went from business to business in Chinatown. They were carrying notepads, and as soon as they came out of the store, they would mark the address and the amount on this pad of how much they collected. It was just so blatantly done.
Over the course of 6 months, the informant recorded conversations with gang leader David Tye and others. Gangbusters used the information to prevent robberies, and on one occasion, the taking of several innocent lives.
The Pho Bang was a restaurant that had contracted, rather than paying extortion to the gang, had contracted to allow the gang members to eat there once, twice, 3 times a week. And at one point they had decided they would try and renege on that agreement. And David dispatched someone with a homemade bomb to bomb the restaurant.
As we were setting up our surveillance and setting up on the area and the restaurant, the car showed up, and we just had to react, and before we know it, the gang members were on their way into the restaurant. Fortunately enough, we were able to apprehend them. They were carrying the device with lit cigarettes in their hands.
The agents confiscated the bomb and arrested 2 gang members.
The following day, when David Tye speaks to the informant, and the informant tells him that the gang members who were going to bomb this restaurant had been arrested, you see that David Tye reacts. He's very upset about it. One of the nicest pieces of evidence that I had in the case was an X-ray of this bomb that the New York City Police Department took right after they recovered it, which, far from showing it was fireworks, showed it was a lethal device that could have killed people.
After the Pho Bang incidents, gangbusters decided that the operation was becoming too risky, and David Tye too dangerous. On August 12, 1991, the task force moved in and arrested David Tye at his Long Island home. Inside, they found handguns, silencers, and materials for making bombs. In Brooklyn, investigators raided a BTK safe house. In all, 10 arrests were made. In March 1992, a federal jury convicted 7 BTK members on robbery, murder, extortion, and racketeering charges. David Tye and his second-in-command, Lan Tran, each received life in prison without parole. The gangbusters had succeeded in crippling Born to Kill and earning the trust of the community which the gang had terrorized.
I still, from time to time, I'm out in Chinatown, and I still talk to some of the people, the witnesses who played a major part in our prosecution. And you could just tell that they're very thankful for and appreciative for the fact that we were able to, with their assistance,